was better not to advertise it too much. And we knew that if something bad happened, the government, the state, the police will not protect us. Plus, I'm one of 8 and one of 6 sisters, and then we had the double yummy of being, in my case, I'm talking about myself, of being a Jew in a Muslim country and a girl in a Muslim country, where girls were treated horribly and they had no right to anything. So the fact that, for example, I was wearing Western clothes didn't go well with them because their women were all covered up, as we see all over now. So they felt that they could touch us, call us prostitute, expose themselves to us. So as a girl, was not easy. Was not easy for anybody, but as young girls were even more difficult. Fammi qualche altra domanda.
So yours was not the first generation in Libya. Who are the indigenous people of Libya, since indigeneity has become such a watchword of our times?
Yeah.
Are they the Arabs?
No, the indigenous were the Berbers. And interestingly enough, we, the Jews, came with the Berber, or some say even before the Berbers. So
thanks to the Romans. This is going back to Roman times.
To Roman times.
So 2,000 years roughly.
So basically, the Libyans stole, the Arabs stole Libya from the Berbers, talking about people who colonize or whatever. They did. They stole it from the Berbers, and the Berbers were decimated, and we stayed there basically until 1967. And this was my story. Okay, my family was there, I think maybe three generations. They came from Spain, from the thing of Spain.
3 centuries.
3 centuries.
4 centuries.
That's why I need him here.
Yeah.
Three. And so we were there, and as I said, life was almost normal. Oh, Libya, the way I remember Libya, because Tripoli, because I left in 1967, the way I remember it is, if you forget the fact that I was a Jew, Libya at the time was a very rich country. We were number 7 in petrol. We were exporting petrol all over the world. We had the American base, the British base. We had a big Italian influence. So it was basically, even though maybe the world considered it, it was a kingdom. So I still remember going to the festivity for the king. And even though for the world was a third world place, it was not. It was very civilized, etc., considering until, and this is where it comes to what happened to us. But then, as it happened in most places, we had the influence of the guy from
Gamal Abdel Nasser.
Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the president of Egypt. And the interesting thing to see, which I always remind me of these times now, is that Libya was extremely rich and Egypt was extremely poor. It's like if you want to compare, just to give you an idea, Libya was the United States and Egypt was Mexico. So if Libya needed workers, they will call, they will bring them from Egypt, etc. But there was an incredible influence by Gamal Abdel Nasser, who wanted to create a Pan-Arab world, and he wanted to be the leader. So what he did, what most Muslim leaders do, is you have to find the scapegoat, and that was the Jews. So I remember as a child going to the movie and see the
newsreels.
The
younger people may not know what that is, but before the feature film, there would be newsreels from around the world. Black and white, grainy.
And we, the Jews, will sit there petrified, and first they will show the king, and nobody cared, you know, the king will come there, and then they will show Nasser. And his word always ended up and started with the word, the Zionist enemy, the Zionist enemy. And we could see all these Arab, the boys, because girls didn't go, just stand up like with this hatred, with this thing, and the brainwashing started. And so, unless I forgot something that you want to ask me, and so, before 67, like 2-3 weeks before the war, I remember things already were very bad. I remember we couldn't go to
Okay,
school.
stop before we get to 67, which is a critical year. I want to dial back because, first of all, much of the propaganda we hear about this issue when it comes up is, hey, everything was perfect between Muslims and Jews, Jews and Arabs until 1948. It was the creation of the State of Israel. And even then, things were great, but Israel instigated issues in all the Arab countries in order to force the Jews to leave. So it's not our fault, it's the Jews' fault, and it's Israel's fault. Have you heard that before, any of you? Okay, what do you say to that?
It was bullshit. Sorry. Something went. So
That word will now be on television as well, unless it's censored.
So no, absolutely. That you could see the anger, the thing. By the way, I remember still as at my age going to a party with my mother, and I swear to God this is true. Surrounded, my mother had friends. My mother had a lot of affection for the Muslim. In fact, in our family, we always say that she's a Taliban who thinks she's a Jew because she was basically raised by them. And I was at this party, and there were all these young girls my age. And I remember looking at me without words, with such hatred, that I remember I put my head down because I don't know if anybody feel it, just with eyes, that if eyes can kill you. It was basically, it was they drank it in their mother's milk. But anyway, so there was already this negative energy. We didn't go to school. I remember going with my sister in the street, and 3 Arab guys were walking, and usually, I don't know, they will try to touch her breast or touch her behind or expose themselves. That was their modus operandi. Instead, they decided
with women that were non-Muslim.
Yeah, that they were they dressed the Western style, but this time that they didn't want to do anymore. They prefer something stronger to show their feeling. So I remember they did that. And I remember being very scared, and we rushed home. And so this is Tim.
Okay, but before, again, 67 is the pinnacle, but in 1948, when Israel was established, there were roughly 39,000 Jews in Libya. Libya itself had a very small population, so Jews were probably close to 2% of the population. And as my wife said, it was a very wealthy country. And a huge country geographically with enormous potential. But by 1951, when Libya became an independent nation, all but about 5,000 of the Jews had left. Your family stayed. They didn't leave. The others left because they anticipated and were frightened. Why did your family stay? And I understand you were only born in 51, but why did your family stay? Did they trust the new country?
I think that maybe the trust and then force of inertia. You know, whenever people ask me that, I said this is a question that one can say to every Jew who stayed. What about the Jews that stayed in Europe when the Nazis were advancing? What about the Jews that stayed in Lebanon, in Egypt? This is a question that that doesn't have an answer. What about maybe in 80 years they will say, why did you stay in London or stayed in Paris or even in New York? This is the history of the Jews. I don't know if there will be an answer. I cannot tell you an answer also because I never asked my parents, and then as
And
life
now it's too
goes,
late.
then they're not here to answer.
But-
But my father is one of 9, my mother is one of 4, and my father, out of 9, we stayed, we 4 boys out of 9, 5 moved to Israel, and my mother, out of 4, only 2 stayed in Libya, and 2 went to Israel.
So by 1951, half the family was already
Half-
gone.
Yeah, they were escaping, by the way. They were escaping by boat, and we could never talk to them. Never. So if they want to write to us, they write to, we always have a friend in Rome or in Milano, and they will write to this friend, and the friend will write to us. I remember my Aunt Ruth, her name the girl was Luigi. So if we got a letter from Luigi for Milano, we knew that was our aunt.
But in these 16 years from 1951 to 1967, was there religious life? Could you go to a synagogue?
Yeah, we went to synagogue, but it's very difficult to explain. You knew you went to a synagogue, you knew not to linger. They let you go to the synagogue, but God forbid you will wear a Magen David. The boys that did the bar mitzvah, they did it at home, and if they had their books, to go and study before the bar mitzvah, we didn't have bat mitzvah. The girl at that time, the book were hidden. So that's the point, that if there is anybody here from an Arab country, or maybe from Russia or whatever, it's this life where you think you are free because you know how to deal with the little freedom that you are allowed.
But also because you've said before, Juju, because you didn't have any other life. You didn't know any other life. So the abnormal, you said, becomes normalized.
Absolutely. Yeah, we didn't know better, so we just dealt with it. But anyway.
But the Libyan constitution of 1951 was, in some respects, as good as any constitution in the West.
Yeah, they
Lots of
promised us.
guarantees, lots of promises. Could Jews live equally from 1951 to 1967 under the law?
Under the law, but they
Could they?
they didn't respect any of the things that they supposedly promised. For example, Jews, we didn't vote. We never had an Arab, a Libyan passport. If you had to open a business, you had to have a Muslim with you who had to own
51%.
Yeah, 51%. So as I say, it was basically non-freedom, and we accepted it.
Until 1967. Okay, now let's talk about the critical weeks and months leading up to the Six-Day War and what happened.
So basically, as I say, the energy, we could feel that something was wrong. And we were hiding, we were talking to each other. And then the day that the war broke, I'll say,
June 5th.
Yeah. Everything, they were all prepared, and hell broke loose. We had a house with a garden, and this group that maybe were hundreds, maybe were thousands, in my eyes there were thousands, they came into our house, and basically this is why, to me, what happened in Israel October 7 resonates a lot. I mean, my sisters and I, my brother, we talk about it all the time because we witnessed it. It happened to us even though we were saved. They basically entered and they wanted to burn us alive. They had their thing and they started, and what saved us is, I told you, my mother was raised by them. She was raised by the Arabs, so she knew how to talk to them. And what she did 2 very smart things, which later on I realized how brilliant she was. She pushed my father away, because he's a Jew, a man, and us, the 4 girls, that at the time we were 17, 16, 15, and 14, they were one after another. And that was an age which I did not realize it at the time, where we could have giving them bad idea, considering that rape for them is part of. So she hid us, we could hear, but she pushed us, and she confronted them, basically saying, we did nothing to you, we don't even know where Israel is, we are Arab. Don't tell me how it happened, but my mother, when she described it, she said it was like a miracle. And they put the cerino,
Match.
the match
Matches.
inside, and one of them said, leave them, leave them. So of course, we also knew the guy, I never understood, doesn't matter. And she immediately called a friend of ours, an Arab, a Muslim, a wonderful, wonderful man who used to come and listen with my father to Kalsum, which you must know who Kalsum was.
Very famous singer.
A very famous singer, and this is why.
And an anti-Zionist.
An anti-Zionist. And my mother said, doesn't matter. She said, please, you have to come and save us. And by then they did the curfew, because we did not realize, but they burned a lot and they killed some Jews, and thank God we didn't know it. So I remember he sent us, he was a kind of an aristocrat almost. He sent us his driver, and we all wore like burqas, including my father, you know, to cover our eyes, and he brought us to his house. And so we went and lived in his house, and I want to tell you this to show you how, as the French say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And I feel this now since October 7, but even before, I cannot believe this gaslighting, this lie that everybody is buying it, because I witnessed it, but I thought only people in the third world can buy such lies, but instead it happened. So we were at the house of this guy, and this villa, and I remember my mother with us, the girls, was one section, listening only to their little radio, listening to the news in Arabic. And my father was on the other side of the villa with the owner, and he had TVs. Of course, he had the BBC, he had the Italian thing, he had the French one, he had. And one day, maybe a week after we were there, I sneaked to see my father on the other side. And I remember he said, how are you doing? He's sitting there watching TV in a good mood. And I tell him, Papa, how can you be in such good mood? Our mother is crying. He said, why? Thank God we are saved. And I said, because the Arab news in the radio from the Arab station is saying that Israel was completely destroyed and every Israeli is dead. And I never forget, he told me, go to your mother and whisper to her that they are lying, that this was one of the biggest victory, and that Israel won in few days. And I never forget, and he told me smiling, and the Egyptians are running in the desert in the hot sand without shoes. So I went to my mother and I told her. Another thing that happened, that again, one see again the brainwashing there, is that my mother, who could read them, after about a week, 10 days, she told me, go to your father and tell him to find an excuse and we want to go home. So I said, but why? We're okay here. He said, I know. He's a wonderful man. His wife is wonderful. The children, they were boys. They are already completely brainwashed. If we stay here longer, the children are going to sell us out, even if that risks the life of their father. And so we took, and I remember my mother said, if I have to die, I'd rather die in my own house. And so she found an excuse, and then we went home. And anyway, I'll be very quick in that. And the good thing that helped us, because the only people who could help us is Israel. Can you imagine? We couldn't even say we know Israel. So with our luck, there was an Italian ambassador, tell me if I'm forgetting something, there was an Italian ambassador who took pity on us, and he managed to get us an exit visa, all the Jews to go to stay in Italy. And we all went to
All the
Italy.
Jews except those who were killed in '67. And there were several dozen, including people you knew,
Including,
who were murdered by mobs.
yeah. And the other thing was interesting is that, I'll tell you about the families, is what they did, which was almost a sick joke. They came to us, the police, and they said, look, we don't know what to do with you. We cannot save you, so you have two choices. You either live with 30 pounds per family, per person, $30, let's say, and one suitcase, or we have a camp, you can stay in the camp. So no one Jew stayed, we are going to stay in this camp, just let us go, 30 pounds or not 30 pounds. The other thing is to show you also the influence of Egypt, is that what they did, and thank God we were saved, really, you have to believe in miracles. And I'm very cynical about all this, but you start believing. The families who were killed, including, somebody was telling us that when they went into this forest, there were all these bodies and a little doll and a child. You know, history repeats itself. The Egyptians, because there was a lot of influence of the Egyptians there, not that the Libyans were much better, but the Egyptians were pushing. The Egyptians went there and pretended to be police and said, come, we'll take you to safety. And some families, to be nice, they had neighbors that they were Jews, so they knocked and they said, come, come, they're taking us to safety. So instead of one family dead, there were 2 or 3.
And you knew some of them.
I knew some of them. One, a family, there were 7 boys, beautiful, beautiful family, but you know, it's... Anyway, so you have other questions?
I have lots of questions, and I'm sure you. So, you were offered safe passage,
We offered safe passage to Rome.
and by the time you and the others left, how many Jews remained in Libya
You mean now or by the time we left?
after?
Nobody, but then what happened, people needed money, so some people, including my mother, decided to go to try to save some. And they were prisoners there basically for almost 1 year, house arrest, and a guy who now lives in Israel, who was in jail for almost 6-7 years. And then finally he was liberated.
How many Jews live in Libya today?
Nobody, none, nobody.
No one.
No one.
As far as you know, because you stayed in touch with some Libyan Arab families that were friendly, is there any memorial, memory,
No.
evidence that Jews ever lived in Libya?
No, in fact, I'm part of a group of Libyan Jews, because I'm part of a group of Libyan Jews, and we write, etc., and this wonderful man who's trying to bring back all the foods and everything, they created a virtual cemetery that you can reach by virtually, come si fa?
Virtual, online.
And everybody, let's say, I get the name of my grandfather, of my uncle, a young man who died at the age of 33, like 5 months before this happened. And the interesting thing, though, is that I'm part of this group, and everybody says, we feel terrible for those who died, but for us, forget that we lost our money. We couldn't bring our dog, Bobby. We left him there. It was the best thing at the end that happened, because finally we reached freedom. We knew what freedom was. You know, you don't know what it was, and then all of a sudden you know it. And
Do you have any desire later in life now to return and visit?
no, to visit what? The place is destroyed. In fact, I met somebody the other day who travels a lot in Libya. He's
a Brit. He's a Brit.
He's a Brit, but his job is to protect those. And he said the place is in shambles, but what is interesting to me is that, you know, Libya, we had magnificent old, come si dice, antiquity.
Roman antiquities.
Roman
Leptis
antiquity.
Magnus.
Yeah, Leptis Mania, Sabrata, and they are still there. And
So how do you feel every day, because you're a news junkie, every day you hear someone somewhere referring to Palestinian refugees, and you turn on all the news media, the TV outlets and others, you never hear anything about the story of 850,000 Jews. Libya, not a single Jew. Algeria, not a single Jew. Sudan, not a single Jew. I can keep going along a very long list in an arch that takes us all the way to Afghanistan, and no Jews. How do you feel?
It's very interesting because up to last year, before October 7, I think you asked me and then I was interviewed somewhere else, and I said that in a way the fact that people like my family and people from Lebanon, from Morocco, from Tunisia, they did not talk. I always use this expression, our come si dice, revival, our victory to what was done to us became almost our own defeat, because nobody knows about us. You understand? Everybody just hears. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, when I couldn't sleep, I just had this other idea that no, the reason we survive is because we fight for life. We do not let rancor or hatred run our life. You know, I heard there is I hope I'm not getting confused, if not my husband will translate. There is an African proverb that says, serving hate or rancor for your enemies is like drinking poison, hope that the enemy dies. And I think this is the difference between us and the Palestinian and the rest of the Arabs who hate us, is that they are so much living in this hatred, they cannot give it up, that they are dying little by little and killing some of us with them, because when they have, we decided to say, look, the Libyan Jews, we went to Rome, nobody helped us. I went to work, honest to God, I was 16. And you have to realize 16 coming from the third world is like now being 12. It's not the 16 of now. We arrived the 14th of July, the 18th of July I went to work, me and my sister. And the rest, the Roman Jews, the Jews from Rome gave us a job in a store. I remember the first shock when they said you have to clean the floor. And I went to my father and I said, but if they're teaching me to sell clothes, why do I have to clean the floor? And he said, because this is it, do it. And they pay us nothing. But we went to work. We never became the victim. We were cry about what we left, but then we wanted to live, we wanted to survive. We still love their music, we still love their food. We try to take from this lemon, to use an American expression, we try to make lemonade. And this is why part of me wish all of you knew more, and if I had a wish is that if you didn't know it, to pass it along and to maybe have more people that are willing to talk. I'm not the only one, and some of them are talking. Are some writing books? No.
There have been just a few books.
Yeah, but and to pass it along. But my message is of positivity, of loving life, of not being a victim. And unfortunately, though, I am not a psychiatrist, but people love victims. So nobody can like us. You know, I always say these keys that I'm sorry that because to me the Palestinians have these keys. This is my mother key. This is the story of the keys.
The keys.
Yeah, and I'm saying the other day, I said I wish they go to the United Nations, not that I trust them, and put 2 bags and said, here the Arab Jews put their keys, and you, the Palestinian, put your bloody keys, and see who has more keys.
Right.
You understand? That is what. Okay, I finished.
So I'll bring you in on a little family secret. For my work, over many years, I traveled a lot in the Arab world, often very quietly. And every once in a while, I would say to my wife, do you want to come? And this began 1975, we first met. And it was not until about 3 or 4 years ago, so that's 45 years, that my wife finally said yes for the very first time. I will come with you, which was almost like an earthquake in our own family relationship. And the trip was going to take us, we went on actually separate trips. We went to Saudi Arabia, I went for work. We went to the UAE, and we went to Bahrain. So how did that sit with you after 45 years of saying, I can't go back, it's too traumatic, I'm still suffering from that vision of mobs with torches who wanted to burn our house down with us inside? What happened on those trips?
It goes back to what I was just telling you, that we let go of rancor and hatred. So it's interesting, David was shocked. It was almost healing to listen to the language, even though my Arabic, I would like to improve it, but to listening to the Arabic, to their food, they're very, very friendly, the Arab. I always say they either cut your neck or they love you to death. No offense, but this is reality. And no, it was in a way healing. And even Saudi Arabia was interesting. I hope I'm not wrong. I'm positive about Saudi Arabia. I think they are almost on the way of changing. And no, it was very good to go. But remember, that was not Libya. I knew I was going in a safe place. I mean, Abu Dhabi now.
But you wouldn't have gone there,
yeah,
10 years ago or 20 years ago. And another thing that I'll share, hoping you'll respond, was after the American withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, I've known this woman since 1975. We have children, we have children-in-law, we have grandchildren. I have never seen my wife react as emotionally as after the invasion of, the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Why? Why? I remember the middle of the night.
Yeah. Because I felt for the women. You see, you have to be a woman who live in a Muslim world, who doesn't wear the burqa, and we don't know what happened to them inside closed door, to understand how women are treated. And I felt I was lucky because I was mistreated and I saw freedom. Sorry, I don't know, you mentioned that. And the Afghani girls, they had it for 10 years. And then it lost. To me, it was so painful. But what can we do? I mean, this is one of the many mistakes of the stupid West who don't know history and then they try to get involved. Anyway, ask me another question.
Okay, I'll ask maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then hopefully the audience will have questions. So, you said the stupid West, and it's not the first time I've heard my wonderful wife say the stupid West, the naive West, the illusory West. Why is the West stupid? What are we missing? What are governments missing? What are the people missing in understanding this part of the world from your perspective? Why stupid?
Well, I'm not here to discuss politics. I'm just here to tell my story.
But you introduced the term "stupid West."
No, I know.
and that's not a Republican, Democrat, or Labor, Tory. Why the stupid West?
I want just to say one thing, and I send it to a lot of friends. I watch reels because I don't watch to what TV, you know, where they give you little pieces of speeches or whatever. And there was this guy with all his thing from either Abu Dhabi and he was speaking to an American audience in Arabic with a translator. And at a certain point he said, I need to tell you this in English. And the translator said, no, sir, I can translate. And he said, I know you can translate, but it's very important for me to say it in English. And he said, I cannot quote him verbatim, but basically the point is, he said, listen to me. All the terrorism, all the stuff that will happen will come from now on from the West. The West is going to allow it all because the West did not understand the Middle East, and they continue making one mistake after mistake. And I agree with him. And the other thing, for example, I didn't come to all the lectures. Sorry, Charles. There are other things to do. But a lot of the things, and please tell me if I missed it, I saw the people talking about what's happening to Israel. And if you ask me, Israel is a terrible thing. People die, people will die again. My sister called us today, I have two sisters, told us, please relax. We're trying to go on with our life, but we know something is going to happen, you know, because Hania was killed. But the West, we are in such danger, and we don't see it. And I give you an example. We Jews, they start with us. Look at Libya, I told you. The rich country, we had the British, we had the American, we had the Italian, we had, what happened? They got rid of us, and then the Italian were there. And now if you go, so they killed some Italian, I don't know what happened to the British.
Well, you may remember ISIS in Libya.
Oh, yeah.
And the Christians who were forced to kneel, who were blindfolded, and what was his name, Jihad John, or whatever his name was, with a machete, beheaded all of them. My guess is that they went looking for the Jews. The Jews were gone by 1967, fast forward 35, 40 years. So the Saturday people were gone. So who was next? The Sunday people. The Sunday people. I think that's what you're trying to say.
100%.
So if the Sunday people think they're safe because this is only about the Saturday people, I think what you're saying is reevaluate. Reevaluate.
And I feel like we are all in a deep sleep. And you know, my mother always say, if you are sick, before you go to a doctor, go to a person that was sick before you. I'm sorry, I keep repeating that. I feel, honestly, that I survived a terrible epidemic like COVID, but worse than COVID. And now this epidemic is hitting the West, and the people don't realize it. The people said, oh, it's a cold, let me take 2 aspirin. Oh, it's a cold. And I'm telling, and I want to scream, no, it's an epidemic. Do something before it's too late. And this is what, poor David, sometimes he doesn't smoke, he pretends to say, I'm going out to buy cigarette just because it's overwhelming to be with me. I'm always so angry because I feel like I'm screaming, and there are a lot of friends I cannot talk with. I cannot talk with them. I mean, I'm sure after October 7, a lot of people lost friends, and they live, the world live in this.
Okay, my last question, and then I turn to you. What does Israel mean in all of this to you? I mean, you have 2 sisters who moved there. One went as a lone soldier. They've been there for 50 years, 3 generations. Fate did not take us to Israel, but I know you pretty well. Israel is not a hobby of yours. It's in your milk, the mother's milk. It's in your bloodstream. Why?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Because First of all, because Zionism is, I don't know, as you say, I just said before, for the Muslim, the hatred for the Jews, they take it from their mother milk. For us, is Zionism, this country represents everything for us. And also, which is interesting, is that I see the difference, for example, vis-a-vis Israel between the Libyan Jews, the French Jews, the English Jews, and the American Jews. The American Jews live into this bubble in which they feel this is our country, nothing will ever happen to us. We never had this luxury, which now it might come to help us, when we know that at the end is like having only one mother who loves you. We have only this country. And we know what happened to the Jews without this country. So Israel, I cannot even, it's like you telling me, why did you have kids? Do you like your kids? It's very difficult to explain.
Well, that's a
Israel.
whole other discussion. Depends on the day of the week. Okay, can we take some? Oh, wow. Wow, okay. Al-Shadeh, with no attempt at sort of discrimination, I want to begin with women, because my wife really spoke powerfully to the women as well, and we'll certainly get to the men. So, Joe.
Thank you so much. Thank you for telling us your story. And I feel the same pain about Afghanistan. It's indescribable. So the story of the 850,000 Jews who were victims of pogroms at North Africa, the Levant is really run. The Jews don't know it enough, and the Jews don't show it enough. And I don't know if this is an Ashkenazi Mizrahi thing, or if the Holocaust overshadowed everything. But it seems to me that we don't do enough to tell the story. We don't have memorials. We don't have museums about it. There seems to be this, when the Holocaust is the standard of anti-Semitism, it's very hard to recognize anything beneath it. So I just wonder what more we can do. We've got to educate the world, and we've got to educate Jews about it. It's sort of part of this, as you say, every Jew has a key to somewhere, whether it's Kiev, Lithuania, or Libya. And why have we not done enough? And what more can we do to truly educate? And I think there needs to be museums about this.
Do you want to take a couple of questions?
No, I want to answer quickly.
Move forward.
First of all, I think will be unfair of me, I suppose you're Ashkenazi, right? It would be unfair of me to expect other people to do what we didn't do. And I don't know why we didn't do it. I think it's something to do also with the way we were brought up. Remember, we came from third world country. And there was something that I remember one of the things when I married David, American Jew, and my first cousin, married a guy from
St. Louis.
An American.
St. Louis.
St. Louis, Missouri. And when we were talking to each other about how it is to be married to American, I remember we said, they're so obnoxious, everyone. I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish, I'm Jewish. Shut up already. Because it's true, by the way, because we were so. It's very difficult to come out of this.
Shell.
This shell. I think that's one of the reasons.
Do you understand what? We had the luxury as Jews in the West of being able to be very public about who we are, our stories. They came from a culture where they had to be very private and almost secretive.
That's why we didn't talk. But
by the way, also there was no university in Libya at that time.
But they were in other
No, but I mean, in other words, even the level of education, unless you went abroad, if you could.
Yeah.
So it's very different from people like Albert Einstein coming from Germany to America and going straight to Princeton.
I think Arab Jews, our forte was business, and we went to country. You see, American became, the Ashkenazim, they become piano concerto and doctors, etc., we become. And there are some, for example, if you go to Israel, there is a museum of Libyan Jews, very nice, and I forgot the name. So that was the question. So that.
But there's no legacy in Libya. And now we're beginning to see in the UAE, we see a synagogue, a beautiful synagogue. So there's some effort in some places, but not others. El Shaddai, where are you? Okay.
I'm right here. I'm Giulietta. Thank you so much for being a voice for the Middle East and North African Jews. Your story just hits home for everybody. I have maybe a question for both, two questions for both of you. I believe that the radicalism that we see here in the West, especially in America, is even more dangerous than what we see in the Middle East. For example, the UAE and etc. They're a little bit more maybe friendly, might be friendly than what we see on campuses here. So how can we combat that? I don't think we can combat that with love. So how can we combat that radicalism that lives here in the United States, even among the Western students that are leftists? The other thing is, it is crucial, and David, maybe this is to you, it is crucial for a conversation to really in a serious way begin with the Middle Eastern Jews, because I'm not Jewish, I'm an Assyrian Christian, but I came from Iran. And Assyrian people have harbored Jews in Iraq during the Farhud, I must say that. So we have something to add to the conversation as Middle Eastern Christians and Middle Eastern Jews to help combat some of this hatred that is going on in the West. Thank you.
Rispondo io prima. You have to understand, I always tell my friend American, I said, in a way, I am damned and I'm blessed from the fact that Jews, come si dice, assimilate. And I have a lot of Arab blood in me, which basically you can become irrational or whatever and hatred. I honestly think that now the war is so, it is like the way I look at it. Let's say I'm a doctor and there is this epidemic that I told you, and I'm telling you this epidemic is bad, let's cure it. And some doctors are saying, yes, but let's find the cause of what brings that. I think we should now try to fight without any regard, any pity, anything. And then if we solve it, we can do it. And by the way, in response to all these incredible lectures, etc., about what created anti-Semitism, where did they start anti-Semitism? To me, I always think of, I think it was a French philosopher who said, if the Jew didn't exist, the anti-Semite would have invented him.
Yeah, Jean-Paul Sartre.
Jean-Paul Sartre who said that. And to me, that's it. I mean, there are so many things that one can do, but now we have to go to the core of it. For example, when you talk about colleges, etc., I wish they would put me there as for 2 hours. Everybody who did that cannot get a job, cannot get a diploma, and the people from the outside world put them on a first plane, even first class, and send them back to their bloody place. But we are sitting here, how can we solve this issue when the other people are just lying, brainwashing people? They are fighting in such a dishonest way, and we're still trying to be. So that's my opinion. He'll be more peaceful.
It would be hard to be less. Look, this is for my wife, and I would just say, you're an Assyrian Christian. I think there has to be much more relationship building among the many victims of the intolerance, the tyranny that has taken place in much of MENA, the Middle East and North Africa. And whether it's Assyrian Christians or Maronite Christians, and whether it's Baha'i, and whether it's Kurds, by the way, and whether it's Muslims who have come and very courageously said that we cannot endorse this kind of repression. And just as as a product of the Cold War, we needed Soviet dissident voices, people like Natan Sharansky, whom you heard from on Sunday, who spent 9 years of his life in the Gulag in order to tell a largely gullible Western world that the communism of reality was very different from the socialism of their dreams. So to me, that's the absolute first thing. And the second thing is to make sure that those who not only care about the Jews, but defend liberal democracy, understand that the stakes involved are way bigger than the Jews. And I reject the notion of the canary in the coal mine, which is often sort of descriptive of the Jews. And the reason I reject it, not because it's not accurate, because I'll be damned if I'm going to die from methane gas to let others in the Western world live. I'm not playing that role. My wife is not playing that role. Our children, our soon-to-be 8 grandchildren, are not going to play that role either. I would say facetiously, let someone else play that role, or even more importantly, let's all construct a world where that's not necessary, but maybe that's a utopian idea. But it's a time to roll up our sleeves, to partner, to stand up. The stakes couldn't be higher. The stakes couldn't be higher. El Shaddai, where are you? By the way, you're welcome to transition to anyone here. Maybe transition is the wrong word, but.
I'm Brenda Scheingold. I'm from George Mason University.
Where are you?
And I'm right here.
Oh, yes, hi, Brenda, sorry.
And I just want to thank you for gifting us with this story. No one can tell this like you can. No one. And I hope you write it down. I hope that it goes on the ISGAP website as a curriculum development tool so that all of us can use it in our classes and help make it larger than what you just yourself can do. So I don't have a question, it was a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Harris, sorry, for the sake of historical facts, Christian and Jews were enemy since the Pact of Omar.
Well, El Shaddai, we're over here for a moment.
I just said it.
No, I want to make sure everyone hears it, Robert.
Okay, sorry.
Please.
And sorry, because I had to, sorry.
No, please say it.
Since the Pact of Omar, when Omar invaded, and especially took Jerusalem, they have the Pact of Omar. And as dhimmi, we were regarded as, maybe in Arabic word, in the dhimma of, or in the protection of.
Does everyone know what the word dhimmi means? Because could you explain?
Let me explain.
It's a very important word.
When the Arab invaded, you know what I mean? They killed other people, or they forced people to go ahead and convert. When it came to the Christian and the Jews, they said, okay, we are not going to do anything to you, but you are going to be dhimmi, you are in our protection. And as such, you are second-class citizen, and you have to pay something called jizya. Jizya is a head tax. You pay head tax, and you are not going to get conscripted. And mainly throughout the years, as a matter of fact, the centuries, Jews and Christians lived terribly under the Arabs, under the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and the Ottoman. And I'll give you more as a matter of fact. Muhammad Ali, when he went to Lebanon, and this is from Egypt, and he split from the Ottoman Empire, he wanted to bring equality to the Christian there. This led to massacres, as a matter of fact, not only in Mount of Lebanon, but in Mount of Lebanon and Syria. So merely you have my point is, you had a pattern where Jews and Christians, but Jews, of course, they suffered more, in that they were more than second-class citizens in the Muslim world. And this is, as a matter of fact, I look at it as a psychological thing. Why? Because I feel sometimes the Muslims, as they approach us, they feel that how could this happen to us? And sometimes some of this hatred that comes, toward us, and especially toward the Jews, how dare you become as powerful and as strong living in our land? Thank you. Sorry that I spoke.
No, thank you. Where are we, El Shaddai?
Thank you so much for this, both yourself and your husband. Very emotional and very, very, very informative and insightful. And thank you for sharing your story. I think the gentleman answered my question. You all answered my question as well through some of the others. But I'm going to ask it, and maybe if you want to follow up on it, I think that'll be great. So I'm not sure how other countries are really supposed to treat their non-majority, but and predominantly, and I'm speaking from an American bubble, I get it, but in predominantly Muslim countries, they're supposed to treat Jews and other non-Muslims with respect, courtesy, freedom of religion, movement, etc., on the model that Prophet Muhammad did in Yathrib or Medina during his period. So I guess my question is do you think the issue is a matter of something that is a matter of Islam in the Middle East in particular, or do you think that, I guess, what we're seeing is something that's consuming Islam sort of all over the place at this point?
Non ho capito, fammi puoi risponderli. Che
The gentleman asked whether Islam is supposed to be a religion that practices tolerance toward other religions. So the fact that it's not, he's saying in some countries, is that a problem of Islam or is it a problem of something else? Did I get that more or less right, sir?
By the way, sir, I don't know, I cannot answer you, but I'm going to tell you as a black person, do you know, and here we have another who lived in the Middle East, do you know how the Arabs call the blacks? They call them slaves. It took me a while to understand.
The Arabic word.
The Arabic word is slave, and for example, we all see Abdul Rahman. If you go, we went to this magnificent mosque in Dubai or Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, magnificent.
And it says, I don't know if anybody's Muslim here, God has 99 names. And the 99 names are Rahman, which means the merciful, Abdul Hamid, the loving, and all are Abdul Hamid, Abdul Rahman, which is the slave or the slave of God. Abdullah is the slave of God. So the point is that just to answer you, this is a culture that has no respect for minorities, and the moment we accept it and we are not PC, I think we cannot solve the issue until we tell the truth, and nobody's willing to tell the truth. You understand? And if you say the truth, you are Islamophobic, you had that. No, they are very xenophobic. There is a lot of ignorance. I mean, you say the statistic of how many books are written or translated in the Middle East. It's scary. It's scary that there is no desire for culture. There is, and who is the biggest victim of all of this? The Arab themselves. The Arab themselves, because few group, they have, all the power, and the rest are being rendered slaves. So I don't know how to answer you, but I hope I taught you something that you will share about how they call the blacks, because that also is not well known.
But sir, let me just amplify. Number one, what my wife is referring to is the 2003 UN Arab Human Development Report, UN Arab Human Development Report, which spoke about three major deficits in the Arab world: a democracy deficit, a gender deficit, and a knowledge deficit. And under the knowledge deficit, I don't remember now all of the data, but the number of books translated from foreign languages into Arabic, in the last, 50, 100 years is fewer than the number of languages translated into Spanish in 1 year. I mean, there are many of these sort of data points. I'm not going to get them exactly right. That's number one. Number two, I think we have to say in fairness here, in absolute fairness, just as we can't speak about the Jews, we cannot speak about the Islamic world or the Arab world monolithically. And as we pointed out, countries like Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. On Sunday evening, I spoke about majority Muslim countries like Azerbaijan, and I can go through Central Asia and Albania and others. There are variations, but allow me to say the third point, for those of you who've studied sort of Westphalian 17th century Western history, that as long as there is no separation between religion and state, I mean, if you want to get to the core of issues, then, and by the way, to be fair, in the Jewish world, in the state of Israel, this remains an ongoing issue about the nature of the relationship between the state and religion. However, until now, there is a degree of separation, not full, but a degree of separation in Israel. It's a separate discussion, but minorities live protected. We see the evidence of that. But forgive me, but religion cannot remain pristine pure to your ideals when it's engaged with religion. And I would say that about Jewish, Islamic, Christian. Power corrupts. Politics corrupts. It distorts. It destroys the nobility in so many respects of the aspirational beliefs of religion. So as long as, Chaim, help me, I think all but Lebanon, I believe in the Arab world, have an official religion, then, and I'm not even speaking about non-Arab Muslim majority countries, then inevitably, when you said, sir, at the beginning, the vision of Islam as you understand it will be hijacked or kidnapped or corrupted because of the exigencies of decision-making and government and interest politics. So which is it? Is it a religion or is it a political philosophy governing states? El Shaddai, where are we? Back to you, I hope.
Thank you so much. Hi, here. Hi, my name is Noah from Jerusalem. Thank you for sharing your story. You mentioned the keys, that we should bring the keys of the Palestinians and the keys of the Jews and see which side has more keys. But the Jewish people don't have keys. And I think that's the whole thing. My grandma, she came from Iraq, and she didn't wear the key of the house she was kicked from. My grandpa came from Russia. He didn't have a key because they rebuilt, they moved on, and they didn't stuck in the position of the victim. And you mentioned that the Palestinians in Gaza, they live in so much hate for us, looking for someone to blame for their own situation. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's the system that making sure they will stay victims. We see UNRWA, for example, that made sure in 1948 that Palestinians are the only people that can pass on in the next generations the status of refugee, which means that my if I'm Palestinian, my grandkid will be a refugee no matter where he will be born or when. And I think, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think this is what preventing them from moving on and actually perpetuating their own situation. And actually I have a friend in Ramallah who has family in Gaza, and we talked about this a lot, and she agrees with me. She's saying that the Palestinians in Gaza are against UNRWA, but we don't hear this in the press.
No, I hope everybody heard what she said, which is very true, because what UNRWA did is that basically David always say that Bella Hadid and her sister who are making billions with their idiotic father, they're considered also, sorry, I used that word, they're considered also victims, and they're considered, and that is extremely true. And I always say, you know, that, and I'm not usually an optimist, but I feel that sometimes things happen for a reason. And if anything, October 7, beside we could see all the horror coming from all these halls where all these people were hiding, I mean, it brought at the surface UNRWA. And hopefully something is going to happen already. No matter how much you want to defend, no matter how much you're afraid to become Islamophobic or whatever, we know what UNRWA did. But you are absolutely right. The other thing that you say, we don't have the key, and this is what I was trying to say, that we did not waste the time putting the key. That is, we didn't want the key to make us heavy. We wanted to build. We wanted to send our kids to good school. We wanted to enjoy freedom. We wanted to give to the country that gave us refuge. We wanted to give back. You go back to every country where the Jews were accepted, and you will see, I mean, I don't mean to show off, and if people think I don't care, and you will see how much we gave. You understand? And because we don't like to be victims. So, but what you say, I hope people heard you, because very, very smart about UNRWA. Very, very right. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that one up.
I would love to thank you for what you've said, because I know how difficult it is for a survivor of trauma to speak of that trauma, because it's a reliving of that trauma. But I think it's so important to have heard your story, because I've heard many survivor stories, not just Holocaust in the field that I was working in, but survivors of other genocides. I never heard the story of a Libyan survivor, although my brother had a friend who was one, and he was going to come and speak for us, or at least have his testimony videotaped, and he died in an accident before that date. So his family doesn't know his story. He married an Ashkenazi woman, and the family, he never talked about that. I had a call one day at work from a woman who said, I want to thank you. I'm so-and-so. I didn't know who she was. She said, my sister and I just got up from sitting Shiva for our father, and we went through his mail, and we found the videotape of his testimony. We didn't know his story before that. And so I'm so glad that this was filmed or videotaped. I would urge ISGAP to share it with the AHO, the Association for Holocaust Organizations, so that they could share that with their cohorts. I would urge you to speak, if you can bring yourself to do that again, at the Museum of Jewish History in New York, because they need to know that story, and they don't, and they would love to know that story, and they would love to teach that story. I think that this is so important. And I would love for a videotape of this to go to all our legislators in the United States, because they need to know this also. And I know that a lot of people doubt, have doubts about survivor testimonies, but that's becoming more and more accepted. And I love how you talked about your resilience, because one of my favorite survivors always ended her talk by telling the story of when she first came to America and was living in a very shabby apartment after the war. After the war, there was a shortage of apartments because everybody wanted their own apartments. The soldiers had come back, etc. And they were living in a very shabby apartment. And her cousin, her American cousin, not wealthy, came to visit her, and she was cleaning her windows at the time. Gina was cleaning her windows at the time and singing "God Bless America." And she said, "Are you out of your mind? You're living in this shabbiness," because they hadn't lived that way back in Europe, "and you're singing God Bless America." And she said, "I'm singing it and I mean it, because this is a country that's given us opportunity." People have to hear that.
By the way, for the record, I have to answer. I mean, when I talk about the survival, etc., and the positivity, I'm talking about it from the soul, because when we arrived in Rome, they put us in a pensione, 8 children, a mother and a father in one room, and then we moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. But that also can help you. And my father never survived that, but still we did it. So anyway,
By the way, I would just add one more thing, if I may, and I know there are many questions. one of the differences here is that Germany, the Federal Republic of Germany, post-1949, and Konrad Adenauer as chancellor acknowledged what happened. And Germany established, in a way, almost a unique model in modern history of acknowledging and taking responsibility. By contrast, it took Austria 40 years until 1990 when its chancellor began the confrontation with its past. What's my point? Libya does not acknowledge the issue. Libya does not engage even in its own internal debate about the fate of 2% of the population who vanished from their country. As I said, there are no monuments, memorials, or museums. And you'll hear on, in social media, again, what I said earlier. There was no issue, everything was hunky-dory, it was perfect. Along came Israel, the Mossad instigated everything. They have their own storyline. And in the world in which we live, half the world is ready to believe it without ever meeting my wife or even watching the video of this program.
There is no Libya, that's the problem, maybe, also.
But it's Algeria, it's Yemen, it's Afghanistan, it's Iraq, it's Syria. I can keep going.
David, Giulietta, thank you. Here.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you very much. And David, thank you for pointing out this, because it's as if you read my mind. I know that I'm going to ask a rather more technical question, but I know since he pointed out that you're sort of a news fan, so maybe this question goes to both of you. I remember that around 2020, 2019, there was Jewish groups with American and Israeli groups that organized a collective demand for about $250 billion for all the countries that expelled their Jews and they took their properties, Libya especially. Like it was the $20 billion they erected to legally sue Libya, billion. Like 30 for Tunisia and the rest. It was a total of $250 billion. And back then, I think, since I don't think anyone even remember what happened with that. I don't even hear anything what happened with that. Did you know if there have been any forward movements around that?
I was never very involved in it, and I remember that was a group that was asking, but some other group says just waste of time, especially from Libya that is bankrupt now. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I wish I could help you. I really don't know. But I remember hearing it, but then it disappeared. So there is that gentleman there.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Johannes.
Hi.
Thank you very much for sharing. And your stories remind me very much of the Greek and Armenian communities in Istanbul.
Can you
The Greek and Armenian communities.
The Greek and Armenian communities in Istanbul. Because
Asia Minor.
Yeah, exactly. And because also this person was under the status of dhimmi and persecuted from the same reason as you said in your story. Of course, I cannot compare the context. But I would like to point out that, and I realized hearing your stories again, that it's a matter of clash of civilization sometimes. When there is minorities like Jews, Armenians, and let's say non-Muslims under Ottoman law, sometimes it's a matter of clash of civilization. And maybe it can be that context that anti-Semitism can be also analyzed. But
no, I'm sorry.
There was not a question.
There was not a question. Okay. Thank you.
No, are you Greek?
Yes.
Yeah. I would just say, note in the same context as our discussion on Libya, that until the year 2024, respective Turkish governments have been unwilling to acknowledge, they'll dance around it, but have been unwilling to acknowledge the Armenian genocide beginning in 1915. So even a century later, NATO membership later, flirtation with the European Union and all the rest, they're still unwilling to come to grips with it. And the other thing I would say is when Samuel Huntington wrote his book, The Clash of Civilizations, I don't mean to sound presumptuous, but had I had the time and the skill, the book that I would have written in response would have been called The Clash Within Civilizations. Because I think this is as much about the clash within civilizations, in this case we're talking about one specific civilization, as it is the clash between civilizations.
Hi.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And like others have said, I think it's imperative that your narratives and your stories are included in our combat against anti-Semitism and Jewish history. So I'm very grateful for that. And I have a comment to make on when you mentioned, the fight on the West, like as if the whole, what's going on with the Islamification, the radical Islam is a fight not just on the Jews and on the West. And I've been hearing that comment a lot in the past few days, and even before. And I have an issue with it because there's, in my mind and in some papers that I read, anti-Semitism is so rooted in the Western tradition. And I don't believe that, they're here to fight. Maybe there is elements of democracy and there's elements of fighting, liberalism, but not the Western Judeo-Christian, Christian, not Judeo-Christian, Christian, deeply rooted anti-Semitism. And that's how the alliances that we're finding right now in the Western world is just reigniting an old hatred that is so familiar. And that's why we're seeing such an alliance between the far right, far left, Candace Owens, like all of that. So yeah, I'm skeptical about, and maybe you can convince me, next 2 weeks, that this is truly a combat on the West and not on Jews.
No,
That's a perfect question for you.
No,
ahead.
but basically, if I understood you correctly.
This is really about the Jews in the West and not the West itself.
Yeah, the point is that, let's see if I can explain myself. What worries me is that my fear is that forget the Jews for a second, forget Israel for a second. What we are seeing, like that phenomenon when they say that they put somebody in hot water, and the water get hotter and hotter and hotter until the whatever dies. What's happening now? Forget the Jews. Is that Europe, the United States, is being infiltrated by this mentality. In England, I don't know, I read something, I don't know how many counties already accept Sharia law. I mean, you know what Sharia law? I mean, you can know. Part of Sharia law, a man can say to a woman 3 times, aliyah talaq, aliyah talaq, aliyah talaq, I divorce you, divorce you, divorce you, and the woman is divorced her. She divorced, he takes her kids, everything. This is only one small example what Sharia law is. So I don't know if I understood your question, but I just wanted to make my point clear in what I say about the West, that even if tomorrow we take Israel and we transport it in some island, I don't know, outside New Zealand, and the Jews all go and everything is
Good
okay.
idea.
The problem in the West
I'm there with
is
you.
nothing to do with the Jews now. They use the Jews as an excuse, but the mentality, it's penetrating the West, and the West doesn't see it. And maybe some Jews think they are so preoccupied with what is happening to us that we don't see it. But to repeat, if you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you tell me, who are you worried more about? And I have sisters and millions of cousins in Israel or the rest of the world? I tell you the rest of the world. Israel will have a lot of issues, more people, but Israel will survive And if Israel and we can go to Israel if something happened here, but what is the rest of the world going to? Did I answer your question?
But I think it's a broader discussion.
Okay.
Well, it is, but I would just add.
She wants to start.
Anaya, but take a microphone, please.
No, I just want to say, look at what they're doing. They are burning the flags of America. They're
Bravo.
burning the flags of European countries. They went to the replica of the Liberty Bell.
Bravo.
And this is, if this is not evidence for that this is a war on the West,
Bravo.
I
Nothing
don't
to
know
do.
what else.
Why are you skeptical of the answers? I'm curious.
I guess maybe.
Let's see.
I grew up in France, and I see it more as an assimilation and immigration issue of the Islamification of France in that way, the Africanization of Paris, and I'm sorry for speaking like in politically non-correct terms.
No, it's okay.
But more because they moved and they just live there and they, have a lot of children and they're taking over. They have more votes. They have more positions. So it's kind of maybe in some places it's about they want to impose Sharia law. But what I'm seeing, like my main concern right now is that we're trying to tell people in the West, even if you don't worry about us, the Jews, you should worry about yourself. And I feel it undermines the need that we have in the immediate, because they won't take us seriously. I don't think they're going to see to take us seriously anyways. I think that the Jewish problem is enough of a problem to address, and that should be the focus. And when we try to add the West, I think it's the urgency and equity that we're asking for is being compromised in the process.
I just want to add to what you said. When I say I worry about the West, it's because I worry about Israel. You understand? And that's the point. If we lose, no matter how strong is Israel, whatever, if we lose the support of the West, especially of America, it's going to be a terrible tragedy. You understand? So I'm sorry if I didn't explain it well. So it goes hand in hand. But if we don't explain to the West, who don't see it, that the danger goes to them too, they don't care if we say we are going to do it for Israel.
We're feeding that anti-Semitism of the West by telling them, really we shouldn't need
Okay.
Well,
I'm afraid that we're feeding the anti-Semitism of the West by acknowledging that we don't count, like Jews don't count, they do. But
yeah, I mean, I know there are other questions and we're running out of time, and it's an important discussion. I'd only say this, I mean, the two of us, I'm sure, care like you about anti-Semitism and its urgency, I think both of us, though, we kind of flip the process. If it's only about anti-Semitism, it's largely about Jews fighting anti-Semitism. And one of the points I tried to make on Sunday evening was, the more we try to narrow or proprietize, if there's such a word, anti-Semitism as a Jewish issue, the more we run the risk of facing a growing problem. Not enough people in the world care enough to actually do something, not just say, yeah, it's terrible, but do something. I think the only way is to remind people, as Naya said, on the Columbia campus, they burned the American flag. On the Yale University campus, they replaced the American flag with the Palestinian flag. And on that statue, I think it was at Columbia, they wrote, Hamas is coming. And it's not just about the Jews. Remember this conversation, you're much younger than we are. It's not just about the Jews. Pardon me?
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Last question, you said that maybe in 80 years, people will say, why didn't the Jews leave New York or Paris or London? So my question to you is, what do you think now, considering, since you live in New York, the wave of Jew hatred what will make you say, okay, it's time to leave, or okay, it's time for our kids to leave?
What may make
What
me
would
say
make
to
it-
leave?
No, but you were saying you want to stay and fight.
No, oh no, and it's wonderful that this
great.
wonderful young girl who goes to a French school in New York, very close to where I live, and who is here. Absolutely, in 80 years, I want the world to say that the Jews in the West, they learn from the Holocaust, and they stay, and they fought and fought and fought and fought and changed, and especially because they had young idealistic people like you who are willing to fight. Absolutely, no. There were a lot of mistakes made, but if we don't learn from them, then we are dead. No. In 80 years, they're going to say we stayed and we fought.
Juju and David, thank you very much for an inspiring and powerful session. Thank you.
Thank you.